Today we have a special project for a friend. This is a Walthers Mainline ES44 GEVO for Union Pacific. This is number 7400, the breast cancer awareness locomotive with the pink ribbon. And this actually belongs to the son of friend of the channel, The Extraboard. Check out his channel. He does a lot of cool rail fanning style model train videos, and I've linked it in the description. He has a few Walthers locomotives that need the detailing treatment, and I offered to work on one of them, as I've done this a few times already with my own collection. Included with the locomotive are the Walthers detailing kit, part number 910-250, which includes grab irons and coupler cut levers, which is nice, a PTC antenna from Intermountain, Details West MU hoses, and GE wide cab windshield wipers from Details Associates. I will be installing all the details with my trusty pin vise and primarily a number 80 drill bit. This is a good looking model from Walthers. Molded detail is crisp, paint is well done. I think it'll look a lot better with a few extra details. I like the Walthers Mainline series, as I've likened them in the past to kind of like an updated blue box model, at least in spirit. Solid runners, good paint, just needing those few extra details, and those aftermarket details will go a long way on this value priced model. The first step when I do any sort of detailing like this is to remove the shell. It makes handling the model a lot easier. If I can, I remove the handrails too. This can be a bit tricky. Usually the sides come off pretty simply. Usually the sides come off, but the ones near the steps on the pilot have a tendency to break. This was not a problem on this model, thankfully. Everything came out with too much fuss. One of the requests by the owner was to fill in all the grills so they look a little bit more typical and add some depth. I went ahead and did this first using some Tamiya panel liner in dark brown. With the front handrails removed, I also needed to make sure that I could get at the mounting spots for the nose with my pin vise. I popped out the left ditch light housing so it wouldn't get in the way as I drilled into the nose of the cab. Next we get to that part that you might hesitate the most at, actually drilling into the shell. To start, I make pilot holes with the sharp point of a fresh X-Acto blade, just pressing the tip into where I want the drill to go. Be careful if you do this though, you will break the tip off in the shell at some point, but this does allow the number 80 drill bit to stay in one spot and not wander. We drill out all the different spots on the shell that are getting grab irons, and by far the most difficult part is this area at the back of the inverter here. It is next to impossible to get a pin vise on these mounting areas on the inside. I wasn't able to drill all the way through. I had to drill at a slight angle, and it took some finagling, but we were able to get the grabs installed. On the back there are two long railings that are vertical. On the pilot there's two more areas by where the MU hoses will be installed, and both the front and rear have dimples for where the coupler cut levers will be installed, so you just drill those out, and that's actually really nice. In some of the newer sets of detail parts that Walthers offers, they divide the railings up into separate little bags and they tell you how much of each and what they are for. But not in this kit, you're on your own. The instructions show you roughly where to mount the grabs, but it's important to note how many of each type. There are 4 kind of long grabs for the top of the nose, 2 that are longer than that for the vertical grabs on the rear, 4 kind of long drop grabs for the front of the nose, and 2 drop grabs that are longer than that for the conductor side of the hood just behind the cab. There are also 2 slightly shortish grabs for the rear pilot, above those MU hoses, 3 short drop style grabs for the back of the inverter, and a bunch of identical small grabs for the front and top of the nose, and for one on top of the cab roof. One of the 4 kind of long grabs for the top of the nose was not bent into a grab iron shape. It's just a piece of wire that's now too short to bend and make into a grab iron. I'm sure Walthers would have made this right if they were contacted, but I actually have identical wire from Tichy Train Group. It is just 0.010 phosphor bronze wire. I used one of the other grabs to help measure the length and make the bends, and in less than a minute we have a replacement grab iron, not having to wait for Walthers or anything like that. It's just ready to go. After taking a very short video game break, the grabs were installed and a minuscule drop of super glue was used to hold them into the shell. This is actually the part that's scary for me, potentially getting super glue onto the shell where I don't want it, so I go very slow and ensure the grabs are going where they need to go. I have some really bad flashbacks of getting super glue onto Athearn Blue Box shells and having to scrape it off, and it's just not a great time. After fitting the grabs into the shell, they are painted. For the ones that were yellow, I used Badger Model Flex Armor Yellow, applied in a few coats with a fine-tipped brush. I used Tamiya Cure Arsenal IGN Gray as the Harbor Mist Gray substitute, as I've done in the past, and it looks no different from the gray Walthers used in my opinion. Next, I wanted to knock out the MU hoses. I don't use these metal hoses anymore. They don't keep paint very well. They break if they're manipulated too much. They're hard to glue. And my friend knows my own preference for the plastic ones, but he had these to use, so we're gonna go ahead and use them. I hit them with an automotive etching primer from Rust-Oleum, and then painted them with Tamiya black. They were then glued in place, and I ended up using some E6000 adhesive. Super glue just did not stick and was not working, so we had to go with a more extreme solution for adhesive. For the coupler cut levers, I painted them with the spray can version of the Tamiya Kure Arsenal paint. Then I installed them to the front and rear pilots with just a very small amount of super glue. I also painted the ends of the levers with white, as that is how the prototype is painted. I also painted 2 of the MU receptacle covers red. This is a pop-up cover that usually gets drowned out with track dust and dirt and grime, so you never really see it. But on a cleaner locomotive, I think it really stands out. And the 7400 is typically very clean in the photos I've seen of it. The Intermountain PTC antenna array is a piece that is preferred by the Extraboard when he is detailing locomotives. I personally never see them for sale, but he managed to get a few at some point, and he included it. I do like that they are pre-painted, unlike the Athearn ones, which are more like a pure kit. There are mounting pins on the corners of the PTC like Athearn uses. I will not use these pins as I'm not comfortable drilling into the cab roof, especially on someone else's locomotive, and my odds of screwing that up are too high. So I went ahead and snipped the pins off and sanded the bottom with an 800 grit sanding stick. I applied a very small amount of superglue gel to the inside edge of the detail part using a toothpick, and then lined everything up on the roof, and I think I just about nailed it. So far, we have a model that is more or less ready for the rails and ready to go back to its home. But at this point, I almost forgot the windshield wipers. Let's get those next. Holes were drilled using calipers to measure the distance between the mounting pegs that are on the windshield wipers. I used another fresh X-Acto blade to make the pilot holes underneath the number boards and then drilled them out with my pin vise. I used a tiny bit of Elmer's white glue here, as being this close to the windows, I was worried about fogging up the clear plastic with super glue. And with that, we can call this one done. It is ready to go back home. I was not asked to weather this one, and 7400 typically looks pretty clean anyhow, as mentioned previously. One thing I'll mention is you'll want to pay attention to the packaging if you happen to use the original box, and if it happens to be styrofoam like this one. You'll want to carve out some of the styrofoam where the extra details are, here on the nose and on the cab roof, so the model can sit on its styrofoam tray without anything breaking off. It doesn't take too long to add some of these extra details, and adding the grab irons I think goes a really long way. But even if you don't want to drill into the model, something as simple as adding a PTC array or GPS dome to the cab roof or whatever is appropriate for your model makes them appear less naked, I guess. There's always something on the cab roof, especially on the prototype these days. And whether it's Walthers Mainline, Trainline, Athearn Roundhouse, Ready to Roll, or Old Blue Box, a little extra detail really elevates these budget-friendly models. There are a lot of details available from the old standards like Details West, Details Associates, and CalScale, to name a few, to newer folks like Wallace Locomotive Works and Mack Rail Products making resin 3D printed parts that are easy to get and affordable. It's just another part of the hobby that's a lot of fun, and if you haven't tried it yet, grab a little Blue Box Jeep or switcher from the next train show you go to, and look at adding some extra details. Try matching paint, it doesn't have to be exact, and go to town. But that's going to do it for today. I have to go make a delivery and drop off this locomotive to its owner. Thank you for watching, please subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.